I've been using the camera this year already.
Great. That's great to hear. Yeah.
Not the P.
Not the P, but the Ultim model, the original Ultim. That's great. Yeah. So my name is Emily Ciesielski. I'm with MicaSense. We're a multispectral sensor manufacturer. So thanks to Scott for inviting me to present today. He's got our Ultim sensor currently in use, and invited me today to talk about our latest advancement in our product line, which is our RedEdge-P sensor. So that's what I'll be discussing today. We had a picture here just to talk through some of the key features of this. And first of all, it's a multispectral sensor for those that aren't already familiar. We're looking at both the visible, the red, green, and blue channels, as well as non-visible light. So we're going into the near infrared, and we've got a red edge band in that non-visible as well, since that's the majority of what plants are reflecting. That's how we're able to pick up a lot of information about plant health status before you would see visible signs of stress, whether it's yellowing or other signs for certain diseases. So that's the main focus of these sensors, is for vegetation health analysis. A lot of it gets used with agriculture. A lot of my examples that I'll share are ag related, but it's also used for forestry, being used for invasive species management, a variety of applications there related generally to vegetation management. But the key features of the sensor here, we've got 5 bands. Each of them are dedicated to a specific portion of the light spectrum. So we've got red, green, blue, red edge, and near infrared. The main update here over our previous models is that we've added a panchromatic sensor. So you can see there a 5.1 megapixel sensor. It's a much higher resolution than the 5 multispectral bands. So we're able to, in post-processing, essentially increase the spatial resolution of those multispectral bands using this panchro band. So it's something that's been used in satellite imagery for imaging for a while as a way to keep the satellite itself, the weight and size of it down. And the same concept is applying here. It's just the drone level. We wanted to get to a higher spatial resolution for our customers. That was what was being requested quite a lot. But we needed to be conscious of the size and weight of the whole system for, as that affects the flight time for different drone platforms. So using this process, we're able to achieve, flying at 400 feet, a resolution of 4 centimeters per pixel. And in flying lower, that will get even better. So if you flew half that at 200 feet, you would get 2 centimeters per pixel. So quite a high spatial resolution. We're also able to fly a little bit faster with this sensor, so it can keep up with drone speeds, especially for those that are using fixed wing aircraft that can go quite fast. So instead of 1 capture per second, we're now able to do 2 to 3 captures per second with our new Safe Express storage card. And then another thing that's important for multispectral, any kind of multispectral imaging, is a lighting calibration. So that you can compare your data sets over time, essentially, and look at the changes in biomass or chlorophyll content across a whole season, as opposed to just one snapshot in time. So we're able to do that with our DLS2 there. Just a little bit more information on that pan sharpening process that I mentioned. We're able to fuse that high resolution data to get a higher overall resolution for the multispectral. You can see an example image there. We've got a van, since it's got some nice crisp lines to show the difference there. But on the top, it's the raw output from our green multispectral band. After that pan sharpening process happens using photogrammetry software, then the bottom image shows what that final process is. You can see it's a lot sharper and crisper after that pan sharpening and the increase in the resolution there. The advantages of doing that for the drone mapping side, like I already mentioned, keeping the size and weight of the camera down, but it also allows us to increase that spatial resolution without sacrificing for a narrow field of view. So that's another option that some other sensors out there have gone that route to get the higher spatial resolution, just narrowing the field of view. But then the disadvantage there is With these kinds of sensors, you have to do kind of a lawnmower pattern when you're flying and get lots of overlap. So you can stitch together everything into a fine note with a mosaic. So with a narrow field of view, you're increasing your flight time, essentially. So we wanted to keep a wider field of view. And then another advantage is less data to manage. So you do rack up a lot of data with these sensors when you're flying. So any opportunity we have to cut down on that is always good. So instead of having 5 large files for each of those multispectral bands, you have the one larger file for the Pancro band. And then this is a output from the sensor. So this was flown in Iowa, actually, an RGB composite generated with this RedEdge-P sensor. So you can see lots of detail here. That was even a zoomed in portion of the field. So this is the entire orthomosaic of this soybean field that was flown during some dry down. So to give you a sense of what that 4 centimeters per pixel comes out like. And then what we're achieving here is it's starting to be comparable to some RGB sensors, payload options for drones as well. We're hearing from a lot of our customers, they're flying with our original RedEdge as well as a RGB camera to do some machine learning work. So with this RedEdge-P, the idea is having a sensor that will be more of an all-in-one solution. So if you want to fly early emergence, in this case, some corn, and do some plant counting work, then you can do that with the sensor, as well as fly it later on in the season when the crop canopy is more mature and you're starting to assess, looking at correlation with nitrogen levels or just in general, trying to identify any discrepancies in the field, areas where there's not uniformity in growth. So on the left-hand side, we've got the DJI X4S. These were both flown at the same altitude. So on the left, you get 1.6 centimeters per pixel. On the right, you get similarly, but 2 centimeter per pixel with our RedEdge-P. And you'll see a big difference there, as well as our sensors, since we have those individual sensors for each multispectral band. We get a really high contrast for our images. So that really helps, in addition to the megapixels from the Pancro sensor, to get a really nice crisp image. Another advantage too of that Pancro band is we're able to get a really nice digital surface model as well. So an additional output from the one sensor. This is a nice example. It's a soccer field, actually, near us. I'm based in the Seattle area. And we flew this. You can see the digital surface model of this area after flying, but we can even crop it in to just look at the field area itself and see the slight variations in elevation there. So from one end of the field to the other, it's about a 3.5 foot slope from one end to the other. You can see that very clearly in the DSM. You can also see for each individual field the field crowns that they've created there for drainage purposes. So you can see it's a slight slope outwards from the center line. So another great data layer that you're able to get from that one flight. A lot of our customers are flying on DJI drones. It's the most popular option generally, at least for the multi-copter drones. And so we have a couple different options for their DJI Matrice 300. One of them is the most streamlined, so it's called the Skyport. It allows the drone to trigger the camera. So typically how it operates with our cameras is the camera is basically in standalone mode. It may be powered by the drone, but it's operating independently as far as triggering. But with this integration, though, it is fully integrated. The drone is commanding the camera to capture. You're able, as the drone is flying and you're looking at your mission controller, you can see the captures are being taken. There's a countdown feature and a shutter sound that happens. And then additionally, you can utilize the RTK from the drone. So if you want to do precision geotagging, our standard setup is our light sensor has some standard GPS embedded in there. So it's going to be a couple meters accuracy as opposed to the couple centimeter accuracy with the RTK. So it's another benefit of that integration. But one thing that we pride ourselves on with our sensors is keeping it open. So both on the drone integration side, it can pretty much be integrated onto any drone as long as it can carry has the payload capacity to carry it, and it can be powered on either through the drone or with a separate battery pack. And then on the software side as well, we keep it open. So there's multiple options. Generally, Pix4D is a common one people use for photogrammetry solutions. But any third-party software that customers want to use, they're able to. We also have a GitHub where people can, if they really want to dive into the metadata and take a look, especially for that irradiance information for the calibration, they can do that as well. Another picture of that integration on the Matrice 300. That light sensor that I mentioned is at the very top of the drone. It can't be shadowed by anything, so that's why it's always on the top there. So just to summarize before I hop into some use cases, the main updates with this over the previous models in our lineup are the higher spatial resolution, the faster capture rate for more efficient flight times, and decrease in a little bit in the data volume. So the first use case I've got here is a strawberry field. So the strawberry plants are quite small at this point. Got the RGB composite, and then a zoom in of one of the areas. You can see each of the rows is covered in a film as well. But we flew this one at 60 meters, so 200 feet. So the resulting resolution here is 2.19 centimeters per pixel. And that allows us to do some machine learning tasks. So namely, plant counting is a really popular one on the agriculture side. So we're able to automate a plant count with this specific data set using the RGB composite. In the end, it was estimated to have a little over 51,000 plants in this area. So that can then be compared with the typical plant rate per acreage that they have for this plot. And then another advantage of using the multispectral is that in addition to doing that plant count, we're also able to get the plant health information. So once that plant count was done, we, using each individual vector of where the plants were identified, we're able to pull the plant health information. In this case, NDVI, which is a common vegetation index, it correlates with plant vigor. So then we're able to create a couple different classifications of extremely healthy in blue, and then have a range of, a little bit more struggling in green, for instance. So you're able to segment that out. A lot of what we're seeing here, the advantage is being able to fine tune yield estimates. So doing that plant count, but then removing the lowest NDVI values, for instance, assuming those are going to be plants that are not going to be producing optimally as far as when you're predicting the final yield. The second example here is a lettuce field. So these are very small as well. Lettuce that was transplanted into the field, I believe some romaine lettuce, if I remember correctly. But in this case, since it's so small and we're looking at such a large area, we aggregated across the row for the lettuce count. So instead of doing the individual counting like we did with the strawberries, the final, at least visualization aspect, is aggregating across each row. So you can very clearly see, okay, those 4 red rows there are the ones that have the least amount of lettuce plants surviving, and then determining if there needs to be a replanting or not happening in those areas. The specific data set was flown at 40 meters, so we're getting 1.3 centimeters per pixel here in the end. And then for reference, this is the on the ground picture of that lettuce field to show how small those lettuce plants are at this point. And this is a broccoli field. So the third data set I'll show here, again, smaller plants. So in this case, I like to show this one because it shows the kind of slight variance in plant health information that you can get with these sensors. So on the left-hand side is the RGB composite, and on the right is pulling NDRE, which is another vegetation index. So NDRE uses our RedEdge band. That one's more correlated with chlorophyll content. So as the plants are maturing, that's a good one to look at. And in this case, each of these rows or accumulation of rows were planted at a slightly different time. So we're able to see that difference in plant maturity and growth very clearly, showing the most mature in blue, those first 3 blue rows and then going into the light green. And then the last example I've got to show you as well is another plant counting one, but this one is we're looking at some larger plants, looking at some oil palm trees. So this was flown at 72 meters. So we're able to get 2.3 centimeter per pixel resolution. This is the RGB composite. Zooming in for some detail there, you can see some of the trees that have died away but are still there on the right-hand side. And then this is that detection. So we don't have nice and neat rows in this case. It's slightly more sporadic as far as the counting in this specific instance. But we used a machine learning detector to create individual polygons for each of these trees. And then we're able to extract the NDRE values. So again, looking at that plant health information to create a couple different classifiers or classifications for assessing the data. And that's what it looks like if you just wanted to pull that plant health information, in this case, NDVI. And this is that final output once everything is completed. So in this case, the healthiest trees are in blue, classified as blue. And you can see they're all clustered around the edge of the field. In this case, that was intentional. They don't harvest at the edges because it's quite a windy area. So they serve as a natural windbreak for the rest of the trees within the field. So that's the last data set I have. Just wanted to provide an overview of our latest sensors. The RedEdge-P has been out for a couple of months now, pretty new still. And then our latest, also having a panchromatic sensor, is our Ultim PT. So the next version of the sensor that Scott has, which is our only line that includes thermal. So with our Ultim PT, that just started shipping last week. And it has, in addition to the higher spatial resolution on the multispectral bands, also a higher thermal resolution as well.
What are you using to process the analysis on the imagery?
Generally, we'll use either Pix4D or Agisoft Metashape as the first step to stitch everything together. They can do the radiometric calibration in those softwares as well. And then for things like this, for the plant counting, we'll use a GIS platform. We've used QGIS, I believe, for this example. There's a couple other options as well for, I know Pix4, specifically for our sensors for the multispectral, it's Pix4D Fields specifically that is developing more. So they're able to do, they're focusing more on the multispectral processing and the features that are required for that, specific kind of data.
For the Pix4D desktop version, there's only one option for the calibration. Typically, you put one in the beginning and then take another set at the end. Mm-hmm. But Pix4D only has an option for one in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. Does it make
much
difference or?
Yeah, we recommend taking you're talking about the panel capture before and after each flight. Mm-hmm. The calibrated reflectance panel. Yeah. So we recommend taking before and after the flight just to see which one is most representative. Sometimes the lighting conditions will change more dramatically from the beginning of the flight to the end. So yeah, for a lot of them just allow you to use one capture. So just picking the one that's more representative for the majority of the flight.
Okay. What happens if you don't use the Skyport at all? The sensor on top. Does that make much of a difference?
If you don't use the Skyport, it's just a difference in the workflow a little bit. So instead of going through the DJI mission planner solely, you'd have to first connect to the camera interface. So you can connect with like a phone or an iPad and connect and configure it to trigger. So we've got a couple different trigger options. There's like a timer mode, overlap mode is what we recommend. So you just enter in the flight altitude, the overlap, which generally we recommend 75%. And you'll set it from there, and then you can disconnect. Then you would pick up and go to the drone mission planner. So it's an extra step basically, and then you'll not, if you've got RTK or PPK on the drone, you won't be able to utilize that unless you had a custom integration to do so. So those are the main differences there.
I'm having some issues right now with it triggering on the 300.
Oh, gotcha. And you have the quick mount.
Yes,
Gotcha.
we have the Skyport, but I don't know why it's
Oh, you do have the Skyport.
not triggering.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely write in to just support@micasense.com, and they'll generally respond within 2 hours.
Okay.
So they're really quick. And they can look at, generally the easiest way for us to investigate stuff like that is if you can just send the log files from the flight where you saw some issues, and then they can read those and see what's up.
Okay.
For the strawberry plant count,
Mhm.
I know you mentioned that you were looking at Agisoft Photoscan and QGIS for the plant count. Excuse me, Pix4D and Agisoft Photoscan. Do you have a preference for when you are doing plant counts on things that may only be 1 or 2 pixels that you're counting?
We've just, I would say, not really. I mean, we've used QGIS since it's the open, free open source option. But any kind of GIS platform where you're able to do that would be fine. We do have, I'll have to look. We have some tutorials on our YouTube channel. I'm not sure if if the plant counting specifically is on there yet, but that's also another place where we've got more in-depth information on some of these analytics that we've done too.
That would be great, because there's specifically Jason here doing tree counts on some plants that are just a pixel or 2, and
Okay.
it'd be awesome to see that for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a note about that.
Thank you. That's really exciting. Have you had pretty high accuracy with the strawberry plants? Because I know those are really tiny.
Yeah, those are very tiny. Yeah. So we did ask, that the area that we flew, the typical, plant rate for that area, and the survival rate, based on our count, was quite good. However, it's not something where we're able to go through and go back and do an on the ground, comparison, doing some samples of some quadrants. That's something that's still on our list. Would be great for us to do, is have that verification piece and do a case study right up on that.
Thank you.
I don't know how long you've had that flight calculator online, but that helps out greatly too.
Oh, good. I will let the support team and the engineering team know, because they just did a big update to that as well.
Using the flight, I would set up the flights, and that I can't remember what software it was. Did you guys produce it? Atlas flight?
The mission planner.
Yeah, that didn't work too well for estimating. For some reason, it never gave me the right. Yeah,
I prefer the flight calculator as well if I'm gearing up for a flight and wanting to determine flight speed, or how much storage space the flight will take up.
Okay. We had someone drop out just before you, so you're the last one of the day.
All right. Thanks for letting me present. I appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for attending. Any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much.
Pardon? Who's joining? Oh, yeah. All right. Next date, when do you want to have a next meeting? When it's warm and a grill out? Fall grill out and then maybe a golf outing? And did this work well for everybody, the remote? Or do you like the visitor center? I don't even know if the visitor center is open, so. Audit. I like both. I don't know. I, and this one was kind of put together just recently. So, we didn't do a lot of publicity, binders and all that kind of stuff.